extra mile. They know it is a concrete cage that can crash cars and crush championship dreams.
It's really, really loose. You do the best you can.
Oh, we got trouble.
Right rear tire's gone on the 88 car.
Uh-oh, you see smoke coming out of this 18 car.
Blow it up, blow it up.
His championship hopes have basically evaporated. Also having issues, the 11 car, Denny Hamlin, been on and off pit road several times. Talk about peaking at the right time. Momentum coming their way here in the chase.
Had enough of 4 tires and we'll pass anybody that gets 2, you know what I mean?
We heard Carl Edwards say he wanted 4. He'd pass anybody that got 2. He ended up with 2 tires.
We'll see how this works. If it works like last time, we'll have no worries.
Yeah, 10-4.
I think that the 4 tires now are starting to overhaul Carl Edwards.
Greg Biffle wins back-to-back in the 2008 chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup. Greg Biffle has been the best of the best in the first 2 rounds of the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup. And now we've moved to Kansas Speedway, where Biffle won a year ago. One of the big stories that's for this weekend involved the pole sitter that was and then wasn't. Juan Pablo Montoya turned the quickest lap in qualifying on Friday and looked anxious to step out and celebrate his first ever NASCAR Sprint Cup pole. But after qualifying, Cup Series Director John Darby and crew chief Brian Petty had a discussion. The qualifying time was disallowed. Word was Juan Pablo had too much gas in his shock absorber. Now let's update Gasgate from the garage area. Here's Dave Burns.
And Doc, I talked with crew chief Brian Petty earlier today about the fallout from that and how they move forward from here. He said, first of all, you can't imagine how big the range of emotions were. Here we have a Formula One driver, ex-Formula One driver, who has won in that series before, coming over here and jumping up and down like a little kid, hugging everyone at his first pole. And then I had to go back and explain to him what had happened and that our qualifying time was disallowed. Now this morning they went back to work to try to get this 42 car back up to speed. Brian Petty has had a meeting with his team. He said, guys, we have to take individual responsibility for these things in the future. For now, as Juan Pablo sat looking at his car before he got into it just moments ago, he's 19th quick on the board. That was the best they could do today, so it had some effect to change that car around, and they're still fighting to make it the car that it once was. Doc?
Dave, what this means now is that Montoya will start 42nd instead of first. Here's the chase driver points and where they will start on Sunday. Note that only 2 chasers qualified in the top 10, which means that there are a lot of them starting toward the middle or back of the pack. For more, here's Jamie Little.
Well, there were a lot of surprising results and emotions after qualifying. As you mentioned, 2 chasers only qualified in the top 10, Matt Kenseth being the other one. Now, 7 chasers qualified 24th or worse. The worst of all of them being Tony Stewart. Because of a human error, he was forced to qualify on owner points. He will roll off 41st. So what does this all mean? Well, here at Kansas, the farthest back a race winner has ever come from was 21st. That was Tony Stewart back in 2006. Right now, though, it's all about fine-tuning and getting the maximum speed out of these cars because it is the NASCAR Sprint Cup Happy Hour coming up next.
Welcome you to our ESPN coverage of NASCAR Sprint Cup Series final practice. You know it as Happy Hour from Kansas Speedway here in Kansas City, Kansas. Hello, everyone. Along with Dale Jarrett, Andy Petrie, I'm Jerry Funch. Glad to have you with us. And, guys, the drivers that are in the chase are supposed to be at the top of their game. So, as you heard Jamie say, over half those drivers qualified toward the back of the field. So, my question as we poll our experts is, why are they back there, and what do they do about it in this session?
Well, I think they're back there because it's a very difficult racetrack to qualify. Fast qualifying lap, not a lot of banking in the corners, and it's the first time they've had this car on this particular track. I think they were all finding out they needed more grip. They'll work their way to the front, though. That's why they're in the chase.
And what they're going to do about it, they're going to get those cars handling good. These guys are going to get down there, make these cars handle and drive good so they can drive their cars from the back to the front. This is a big, wide racetrack. They can pass all over it. So, you know, you can make your way up if you got a good car. And here Tony Stewart looks like he's got a great car. He had a good car in the first practice session. He was third. Even though he qualified in the back, he'll be coming to the front.
This is one of 7 1.5-mile tracks the NASCAR Sprint Cup guys race on, but it is also the track with the least amount of banking of those 1.5-mile tracks. And DJ, you talk about the weather here and the heat. This thing gets pretty slippery.
Yes, pretty slick, and this track has a lot of time on it now. You know, we've been out here a number of years. The racetrack continues to lose grip. The temperature has been up quite a bit, and so it'll be interesting to see how these guys can work around that scenario. And I think what we're going to see, what we saw in the first practice session, guys run on the bottom, the middle, and starting to work up very close to the wall on the outside. So it's going to be interesting to see as we move forward. We see Jeff Gordon riding along with him right now. This is one of the cars that I know that he wasn't where he wanted to be in the first practice session as far as speed went, but his car seemed to hang on pretty good in watching his lap times.
These lap times slow down a lot at this racetrack because of the pavement that's got a lot of age on it, and makes for great racing, but it does make the pace slow way down.
Yeah, we saw cars up in the high 33-second bracket, and even some cars in the 34-second bracket. So it's going to slow down quite a bit, and you're going to really need to roll the corner as fast as you possibly can when that starts happening.
Gordon is a 2-time winner here at Kansas, the only driver to ever win more than once here. Here's a 2-time winner in the chase thus far, Greg Biffle.
He's on top of the charts right now as far as this final practice session goes. He ran a fast lap of 32.26, pretty quick in this heat. And he is the man that everybody is, even though he's not on top of the points yet, he continues at the pace that he's on. He will be shortly. Of course, the winner here last year.
How about the last 6 races? We've seen some back-to-back, and back-to-back action. Carl Edwards, Jimmy Johnson, and Greg Biffle each getting 2 apiece.
Yeah, these guys have been kind of hogging victory lane between the 3 of them. You know, we said that about Kyle Busch and those other 2 guys, and now he's moved in. We see a little teamwork going on here on top of the hauler, and your crew chiefs get together and talk about maybe what you're feeling, what your driver's saying this early in the session.
Yeah, that's a good way to compare notes, to be up on top of the hauler. They're watching the monitor. You can see they're studying that thing intensely. But they can stand there and say, okay, my guy's saying this, what's your guy saying? And then we can figure out where we're going to go. You can find trends that way. You know, which way is the racetrack going? It's are these lap times good? I mean, we're looking at the fast laps show up on our monitor, but then you're watching all the laps, the current laps. You know, the lap they're running right now after they've run 10 or 15 laps.
Our points leader, Carl Edwards, will be our in-race reporter. And if you'd like a shot at asking Carl a question, you can log on to ESPN.com, keyword Ask the Driver, and maybe have your question answered. Asked by Dale Jarrett, answered by Carl Edwards during the pre-race as the cars roll off the grid here on Sunday morning.
Yeah, if you watch our ticker going by, that's not the finish from last week, but those 3 guys are the top 3 guys on the chart right now. Greg Biffle, Matt Kenseth, and Carl Edwards.
You hear us talk all the time about getting up on the wheel. This dude's up on the wheel now. He's up on that thing, steering it back and forth. It takes a lot to make these new cars go around the racetrack.
It does. We see Matt Kenseth here, and Matt's normally one of the smoothest guys out there, but we'll watch his car twitch a little bit, and you can see his hands in there at times moving the car around. These things are really hard to drive at most places, and you get to a racetrack where you have a lot of speed, and then you couple that with not a lot of grip in the corners, then these guys are going to be working hard for 400 miles.
I know it has a lot to do with teamwork, but how does one team like Roush Fenway suddenly just get so good in the chase? And when we saw them, the top 3 finishers last week, at Dover, and they're at the top of the speed charts here.
Well, you saw those guys sitting on top of that hauler. One of those guys figured out something, and the other boys were listening. You know, they learn from it. They use these, the notes from the other teams, and they're doing it like you're supposed to do it when you have a big team like this.
Yeah, see different lines here already. You can see Dale Jr., he was working that top groove in that first session. He continues to move it up even more than he was then. And we noticed in that first session, he takes a really wide entrance into the corner. It's higher than what most of the other guys we saw, even trying to run high. They would enter more in the middle and kind of wash up to the top.
Yeah, we just saw it right there. He is entering turn 3 a good car width wider than anybody that's running that top groove.
He's making it work pretty well. He's 8th quickest right now, but his lap times seem to really continue to be pretty consistent. The tires do fall off somewhat.
Let's see what our pole sitter is running. Jimmy Johnson sat on the pole here last year, had issues in happy hour. And a little contact just a moment ago. A.J. Allmendinger having contact with Kyle Busch.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like Kyle needed just an extra foot right there coming off the corner.
Now, there wasn't contact. Our spotters saying they might have had a little rubbing, but that's not the case when we go back and look at the video.
It's only because A.J. jumped right quick to where it wasn't any contact there.
Kyle Busch coming off a 34th and 43rd place finish in the first two races of the chase. The question is, can he get back? Can he get back and be in contention for the championship? More motorsports coming up. NHRA action tonight, 10:30 Eastern time. NASCAR now tomorrow at 10 a.m. NASCAR Sprint Cup Series at Kansas. Live flag-to-flag coverage, 1 o'clock Eastern. NHRA Finals at 7 o'clock. NASCAR now at 10 o'clock Eastern time. And Roundtable, Monday afternoon. I always enjoy watching a Roundtable. NASCAR now on ESPN2 at 5 o'clock. Back in just a moment. Early laps of NASCAR Sprint Cup Series final practice at Kansas, and Greg Biffle went right out on the racetrack and put up a lap for those to look at. Over 167.3 miles per hour in the early laps here. Let's check in his pits and Dave Burns.
And as he was doing that, he was experiencing some things about the race car after that first lap that you might not want to feel in it. Here were his comments.
Yeah, no rear grip at all. Just too loose to drive. Just slides in, slides across the middle, and just spins all the way out from lap 1 till right there. I just can't drive it no more. And the shifter handle's broken in half.
And just to clarify, that is the top, the knob portion of that shifter handle. For more on that, let's go to the ESPN Tech Center and Tim Brewer.
Thanks, Dave. Look here, folks. You'd think this thing's pretty easy. You know, it's pretty simple. But till I get to lighting these things up, like putting these things here, but you think this shifter knob right here be relatively pretty indestructible, right? Well, it's hollow also. But when these brilliant guys get to lighting all this stuff up, it has a tendency to break.
Well, when he's referring to brilliant guys, I think he's talking about the guys in the seat, right, DJ?
No, I don't think those two words have been used together too often. These guys are smart, and they're very good at what they do. I don't know that we talked about brilliant, but...
Tony Cart.
There's Tony Stewart. He's in the top 10 in practice so far. He was actually third in the early practice, so he's got a good race car. And he's practicing getting on pit road right there. Gets her a little out of shape, but they had a bad qualifying run last night or yesterday afternoon. And I talked to Greg Zippadelli, his crew chief. I said, man, did you guys get real loose qualifying? He said, no. He said, actually, it's kind of crazy. He said, we had tape on the grill for qualifying. The engine man wanted to set the time, and so he pulled that tape off to do that. And somehow we just forgot to put it back on. And you see how these cars are. They're all painted, and it's really hard to see where that tape goes. So it's easy to see how that happens, but boy, it really kills the performance when you don't have that tape on the grill.
So Tony Stewart will start 41st on Sunday. It'll be fun to watch him coming through to the front because he has been running some pretty good laps. 29 car, Kevin Harvick, coming off his 8th consecutive top 10 finish.
Yeah, he's got a ways to come up through tomorrow also, but he's 5th fastest on the speed chart right now, 32.37. A lot of these cars, we talked about these fast laps, and biggest things to watch how much they slow down then and the laps that they might be running now. And a lot of these guys, if you can stay under a second in about a 6 or 8 lap run, you're doing pretty well.
88 car, Dale Earnhardt Jr. running some very good laps in the early part of this practice. Jamie.
Yeah, and he's been pretty consistent the last couple of days in practice. He just came in the garage right before this stint, and he said it feels pretty good. And crew chief Tony Eury Jr. said, well, we're going to take 50 pounds out of the right rear. And he talked about the other day, he mentioned about what they learned in the test at Charlotte just 3 days ago. DJ, what is your take on this? We've heard some drivers say, no, absolutely, we wouldn't change anything at this point in the chase. But some drivers, they've actually found some things they feel would help. What would you do?
Yeah, I think you got to go with what you learn. You know, these things are always changing. See, he better fix that. A little bit loose off of turn 4 there. He was working hard inside that cockpit. But I'm all for when you find new things. You can't just sit on what got you here. That's why Greg Biffle has stepped up. Jimmy Johnson stepped his program up. Carl Edwards came back and really was strong right at the end of the regular season, we'll call it. And so I think you have to do that. And, you know, Charlotte to me is a good place to go test. You can test aero things, a lot of shock deals, springs, and there's a lot of things that you can learn, and you can bring them here and test. Even though the banking's different, I think there's a lot to be gained from that, and you better be continuing to work.
Here's a test of how quickly you can get your heart rate up in a race car. Now watch this a moment ago. Watch Earnhardt Jr. coming off the corner.
He's been running the top of the racetrack, and he tries to get down on the bottom, run that bottom groove. And the car doesn't react the same down there.
Sometimes you saw him get that left front tire just a little bit down below the white line, and a lot of times that'll really grab that front end and make the car turn. And as you get there, you see he's down there, and he's going to get up here close. Oh, yeah. You don't like to do that a lot, I'll assure you.
Earnhardt Jr. driving the same car he led the most laps with at Charlotte back in May. Good race car at another 1.5-mile track here in Kansas. Here's the 8 car, Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s former team, DEI, and this is Mark Martin, who sit on the outside front row, had a great one at Dover. And here this weekend, qualified on the outside front row at Kansas.
Mark loves this kind of racetrack.
Jamie?
And it's the 5th time this season he has qualified second. He has some good memories here at Kansas. Of course, one here in 2005 during the chase when he was in the chase. But that was his last victory. And last weekend, guys, I know a lot of people, a lot of his fans thought maybe that could have been it. But he seems to think he has a good car over here as well. He just came in the garage and said he needs a little bit more cut. So they're working on some different bump stop situations to see if they can get it up there on the speed charts a little bit better. Right now, sitting 7th for Mark Martin.
Yeah, Mark's running well. He's one of those guys that his lap times are within that second range from his fast lap to what he runs at here as the tires build up and get more heat in.
Mark Martin has had plenty of success in his career on 1.5-mile racetracks. In fact, he is a 9-time winner on tracks of this distance. Among active drivers, who is the winningest driver? How about Jeff Gordon? 13 wins. His teammate Jimmy Johnson has been to victory lane 12 times. And Tony Stewart and Bobby Labonte aren't bad either. All of us were saddened today to learn that legendary actor and motorsports enthusiast Paul Newman had passed away last night after a battle with cancer. Paul Newman had a passion for the big screen and the big tracks. He loved acting and he loved racing. He would even arrange his movie schedule so he could spend more time around the sport he loved so much. Our thoughts and prayers go out to Paul's family. Paul Newman was 83 years old. One of the legacies Paul left us with, we all remember the Hole in the Wall gang from some of the early movies. And that Hole in the Wall gang was an inspiration for Kyle Petty and the Petty family to start the Victory Junction Gang Camp to help terminally ill and seriously ill children and their families. And it was announced this weekend that Kyle Petty and his team will be opening a second Victory Junction Gang Camp here in the heartland of America, just 5 miles from this racetrack, as the groundbreaking will begin in 2010. Kyle Petty had a good qualifying effort here this weekend and was very excited about what opening the camp here and maybe continuing his career as a driver, and also the fact of what those camps have done. I mean, obviously the one in North Carolina has been a huge success. The governor of Kansas involved, a lot of local people involved in wanting to get a camp here to be able to help some of the young people in the heartland in the Midwest here who are battling illness as well.
Yeah, we heard Kyle say yesterday, and in talking with him, that as successful as that has been in North Carolina, there were so many kids that they weren't being able to reach out to, and the travel was so extensive that they just couldn't get them all there. So this was a perfect opportunity for them. And yes, you really have to admire Kyle and Patty and that entire family for everything that they've done over the years, especially since Adam's death, in helping these terminally ill kids.
Kyle will start 22nd on Sunday. Here's the 29 car. And we mentioned that Kevin Harvick had some work to do in terms of getting his car where it needs to be. He starts 36th in the race on Sunday, but each and every week, the last 6 or 7 weeks, he has gotten better and better, but able to get a top 10 finish. And don't count this guy out in terms of a possible shot at the NASCAR Sprint Cup.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch them go through the day. You know, last week they started off the race with a decent starting spot, but just went backwards, and then they got to working on the car, and before the day was out, he was back in the top 10 and running very well again. So this wide racetrack here, we're going to see multiple grooves and guys be able to make passes. See Kevin working on the bottom part of the racetrack to get his car handling, and it should allow him to get back up there. If he has a car again to do that, his lap times right now look pretty good.
somewhat of an enigma here after about 3 or 4 weeks of running really, really well. David Rudeman in the 44 car had back-to-back top 10 finishes, led over 100 laps at Richmond, ran in the top 5 for much of the first half of the race at Dover, but has struggled here in qualifying and practice. Jamie?
Yeah, well, the bad news started yesterday. I talked to his crew chief, Ryan Pemberton, yesterday. He said in qualifying, they almost hit the wall. They had a horrible qualifying effort. They qualified 40th, but then this morning in first practice, which was just about an hour ago, they broke a valve, blew the motor. They had to switch it over, and these are just now the first laps that David's getting back out in the car. So bad news for him that he has to start in the back, but actually it was good news that it happened in first practice, so we get some laps on this new motor.
He's going to get a fresh engine, and he was going to start at the back, close to the back anyway, so not really losing much, except maybe a little practice time.
Yeah, if that's going to happen, you want it on a weekend whenever you hadn't made a very good qualifying effort. And I think one thing that they have been running well, and one thing that may be throwing them, as it is a lot, when you get to a racetrack high speed where you have long straightaways, Andy, and you get down there and you've only got 15 degrees of banking, that changes a lot of things about what you've been doing where you had that banking to lean on.
He heads to the garage area, and why don't we check in where Dave is down there with the Jimmy Johnson bunch.
Yeah, Doc, earlier in the practice, Chad Knaus, Jimmy Johnson's crew chief, as we see a left front shock being put on the 48 here right now, he said to his driver, I need you to be hanging out in the flats. That's not a place in Kansas City just to hang out and have fun. What he meant was that he was about 2/10 off the pace that he wanted out of that race car. So they came in, they made some changes, and after a short run, Jimmy had this report.
That was exactly what I needed. Balance of this car is awesome. It feels like we need to drop all 4 tire pressures 2 pounds and put total grip in the car. Outside of that, the thing's awesome.
So the shock change you saw, the possible air pressure adjustment as well. I don't know how much more you can do to the car to make that driver much happier, Andy.
Yeah, I think what they want to do is run those 33 flats, and the best cars are running low 33-second times, and if they could run flats, that would be awesome. And sounds like he's really happy with that thing. Very seldom I hear a driver talk that positive about the car.
That might mean bad news for the rest of the crowd out there tomorrow trying to beat this guy if he's that happy with his race car. And this is a race car, again, that he's won 2 races with at Indianapolis and California. So we know that it's up to the task, and we know that Jimmy Johnson can get it done here too.
While the 48 gets better, the 18 is still struggling, and it's amazing how they just flip a switch when the chase began, and they had trouble at New Hampshire, that 34th place finish, and they had the engine issues at Dover, and they are still trying to find some speed. He is 31st on the speed charts here in Happy Hour.
Yeah, and I don't want to belabor the point, but the type of tracks that have given them the most problems are the ones where there's less banking. And, these other 1.5-mile tracks that he's won on, the 2-mile tracks, they all had more banking than this. Is only 15 degrees, Andy, and I think that's exactly what they're fighting again here.
Yeah, it's just like you was talking about with Rudeman. I mean, these setups that these guys run, and they're either, some of them are good on flat tracks, some of them are good with bank racetracks, and the setups are not the same. So you have to tailor your car to that type of racetrack.
Little deja vu all over again, as Yogi would have said. 2006 and 2008, similar beginnings to a chase for Kyle Busch. Struggled at Loudon and Dover in 2006, finished 10th in the chase, which back then was the lowest you could go. He is 12th right now, coming off disappointing finishes at both those tracks. Back with more Happy Hour in a moment. Race number 3 in the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup comes your way tomorrow, 1 o'clock Eastern time from Kansas Speedway. Our live coverage begins with NASCAR Countdown. Alan Beslick, Brad Daugherty, and Rusty Wallace, and then 267 laps, 400 miles of the NASCAR heavyweights here in the Heartland. Greg Biffle won this race a year ago. There have been 6 different winners in 7 NASCAR Sprint Cup races here. Jeff Burton, the 31 car, qualified 37th, but he is not running there. Much better in Happy Hour. Burton right now is 4th in the points, which makes a lot of people believe he could be a threat for the championship.
Jeff Burton's that guy that is so good at racing.
Jeff Burton in a 31 car always is a factor.
Jeff is just consistent. He's going to be in there every week, digging as hard as he can every lap.
He's a guy that has that experience level like Jeff Gordon or Tony Stewart.
He could be a factor before this thing's over.
He's been there, he's raced for him before, and understands what it's all about.
he's the one who I think could go get this done without winning a race. I mean, he could go run 3rd or 4th every week and win this championship. Nobody discounts Jeff Burton.
And certainly not the team themselves. They are currently 11th quick, at least for one lap time on this track, and trying to find the best setup, the best balance for Jeff right now. And it's amazing how something wafer thin could possibly help this car. They took a shim for the left front end of the car, the left front that is, out because they had some room to play with camber. That's way too much for me to think about. Tim Brewer in our ESPN Tech Center, what can you tell us about shims?
Hey, the purpose of the shims is to manipulate the camber in the tire. What we want to do is fully utilize this wear pin indicator. And if the crew chief said, hey, look, the tire's wearing just a little bit too much in this area, what he's going to do, he's going to go in here and loosen these upper A-frame bolts. He's going to take this shim out, and what that's going to do, he's going to tighten that A-frame up, and it's going to transfer the wear pattern from loading inside back out to the outside. But a shim, we can change it in a 1/16 of an interval. We can change it in a quarter, 3/16, and on a bad day, you can really go in there and change this thing this much. But, you know, it's due to manipulating the tire to utilize the whole surface of the tire to make the car drive a lot better.
Thanks, Tim. Great explanation. Now, Andy, camber, another word for camber is tilt in the top of the tire.
Yeah, you look at this car from the front, you see that if you tilt those tires in at the top, that's negative camber. And then if you tilt them out, that's positive camber. It's the racetracks, you know, the banking and just the lateral force of the car deflects these tires. So you kind of preset that camber so you can get all of the tire on the road. You use all of the rubber that you got across that tire and try to make it wear even and get the most grip. And that's how you fine-tune it, what we just saw Tim showing us.
And you heard him report that they had room for some more camber. Can you explain what he's talking about there?
Well, every time you put a little more camber in these things, it seems like they really respond. They like that. The cars go a little quicker. But then there's a limit. You work that tire too hard, you'll wear it too much on one side, so then you have to back off of it a little bit. What they saw there was the tire was not really wearing badly, and they actually had some room that they could go and put a little more camber, get a little more performance out of it.
Here is the car that was the fastest in qualifying on Friday, and right now in happy hour, he's 36th on speed. And my question to you guys is, how can a shock absorber or gas or whatever make that big a difference?
Well, I'm not sure. You know, we're talking about qualifying trim versus race trim. We're in race practice right now, and honestly, if I was going to do that, I would probably want to do it in race trim. I would want to have the car as high as possible to make all the downforce you can. You know, you race the back end of that car, and it does enhance the wing and how the air goes across the wing and also across the top surface of the car and actually forces the car in the racetrack. So I don't know. I mean, qualifying it had to have helped some, but I think race trim would be where you would miss that the most if you had it.
Yeah, it definitely helps both, but I think that the reason the rule was made is because a lot of them were getting excessive in race trim, just like you say, Andy, and it was really helping there.
18-year-old Joey Logano scheduled to make his second start in NASCAR Sprint Cup competition. He is being shown in the 96 car, currently 38th, and getting what every driver at his age would love to be able to get is valuable laps and experience on the racetrack.
Yeah, that's what he's here for this weekend, is to find out what this racetrack is like in one of these type cars. When he comes back here next year in that 20 car, he won't have to go through a lot of the learning and process that he's having to go through here this weekend.
One of the home state drivers, there are two of them here that have this track, call this track their home track, is Clint Boyer from Emporia, Kansas, about 100 miles away. And boy, he's got his hands full, struggling here with some speed in the back of that car.
Yeah, that back end is not stuck at all, Dale. You can see him sawing that wheel a little bit and keeping it under in here.
Yeah, that was hung out pretty far there. Normally you'll see the good cars, that left front be down on too loose. Yeah,
we'll give you that.
So what could happen there is he's talking about a little too tight but too loose. It might not be turned the way he wants it in the center, but trying to get off the corner, he was really fighting.
Finished second in this race a year ago in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. He said, growing up in Emporia, Kansas, he said, I would drive by here when I was a youngster watching him build this racetrack and dream someday of being able to make the 100-plus mile trip over to Kansas City and maybe get a shot not only to race there, but to maybe win at Kansas Speedway. It could happen this weekend. Saturday night means college football on ABC. Either a Big Ten primetime matchup, Illinois, the Fighting Illini, taking on Penn State's tremendous offense, or Virginia Tech, the Hokies, facing the Cornhuskers of Nebraska. Saturday Night Football presented by Southwest Airlines on ABC tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Check your local listings for the game in your area. Here's a driver who was on top of his game last week at Dover, Delaware. Jamie McMurray in the 26 car, and until he was involved in an incident early on, had the best car on the track.
Got together with Robbie Gordon, and they made a pit stop, or had a round of pit stops where they lost a little bit of track position, but he was coming back up through there pretty good. Got together with Robbie Gordon at 7 and really basically put him out of the race.
Check back in the garage here. You see the 24 car headed back out. Let's go back in the garage and check in with Dave.
And the 99 car headed back out as well. Carl Edwards fighting mostly a loose condition this session. And the crew told me that it hasn't been big wholesale package changes on the cars, just little tweaks on it to try to get it better. That last run, Carl reported, better in and off of the corner, but at the cost of the center. I guess there are at least 3 parts of these corners, aren't there, guys?
Well, you got that right, Dave.
Yeah, the driver
more
good in all of them.
Yeah. There might be more. There's at least 3.
This track here in Kansas City is also the closest track to Carl Edwards' home in Columbia, Missouri, where he grew up and went to college at the University of Missouri. If you make the trek from Columbia, it's just a little under 130 miles, 129 and change, to Kansas Speedway, where he would like to be able to get his first NASCAR Sprint Cup Series victory here.
Carl looks pretty good. He's been, you see all the Roush cars here are these 3 drivers that were 1st, 2nd, and 3rd last week, and they're 1st, 2nd, and 3rd on the charts here.
They've definitely found something.
Yeah, Carl's car looked really good while ago when he made a few laps on his run, staying really consistent.
That's been the real problem. You heard heard a lot of guys talking about the car's loose, so you don't have enough rear grip. As we move through the weekend, that gets worse and worse. But this Roush team has seemed to be able to kind of handle that situation without really hurting their speed through the middle of the corner. Getting the car tight enough.
Yeah, the only thing we saw them was whenever you ran the tires off of it quickly, like Biffle did on the one time last week. You can do that. But if you take care of them, things are going to be pretty good in the long run.
Sam Hornish in the 77 trying to hang on to the back of his Dodge there coming out of the corners.
Now you can see what we're talking about. I mean, it just seemed like all these cars are loose off the corner.
I think we're going to be talking about that a lot tomorrow's telecast.
Sam trying to make sure he gets us, want to keep this car or get this car in the top 35 of the owner's points. Right now he's showing 78 points out of 35th. He's in 37th spot, and you're guaranteed a starting position, not only for the remainder of the year, but you want to be in that top 35 when this year's over, so you know you're going to Daytona for the 500, and you're guaranteed to get in that race.
Yeah, we talk about this chase a lot, and see Dale Jr. here out of his cars. They're going to make some more changes on it, or getting ready to hop back in and make another run. But yeah, being in that top 35 at the end of the season is very important to know that you're going to the Daytona 500 in February and be a part of it.
They've made some adjustments on the 88, and Junior getting ready to head back out. Jamie?
Doc, he was pretty happy with his car yesterday and this morning, but as this track continues to heat up, which is well over 100 degrees now, Junior came on the radio and said it's just not good anymore. So he came in, climbed out of the car, told him to make some adjustments. He said the heights just aren't right. So the team worked on some suspension issues. He got back in the car. He said, let's put some tires on it, fuel, and let's go for it. So they're going to go for a race run here, and we'll see what he's got.
We've seen that time and again where his car is really good early on in a practice or early on in a race, like it was in Michigan, and then within a lap, it just goes away.
You see, these guys have lead ballast or tungsten ballast sitting on the top of this deck lid. They do all the setup on these race cars full of fuel. So whenever they run these things down on fuel, about a half a tank out looks like probably on this 48. They want to go back and get a re-baseline on their scales and their setup, so they have to put that weight back in there to simulate a full tank of fuel without actually putting a full tank of fuel in it.
Obviously, they will weigh without that crew member standing on the car.
Yeah, they've got it jacked up right now, changing the spring, and then they'll drop down on this platform, these scales they've got, and weigh individually all 4 wheels, and that's how they get the balance of the chassis set up.
Crew chiefs are pretty smart. Tungsten, that's That's about as dense as it gets.
Yeah, that's a little heavier than lead, and when you use tungsten in the frame rails for ballast, being more concentrated, you can actually shift that balance front to rear or side to side a little more. It's more effective than using just regular lead like we used to a long time ago.
I can remember when not all the teams and not all of your lead was tungsten, wasn't it, Andy? Because of the cost of it, that a lot of teams said, well, we might have a piece or two of it, but now it's pretty much everybody has to have it.
Those things cost $1,000 for 35 pounds, so you're not going to buy a whole lot of it.
Hey, how about the Biff, Greg Biffle. Wow, at the top of the speed charts here. Greg Biffle coming back to the track where he was able to win his only race a year ago. Yeah, he might have had some help from the weather, but when they waved the checkered flag and finally said, you know, we're done here, it was Greg Biffle who was able to go to victory lane. Biffle took the win here and coughing and sputtering on field, but he got it. That's all that counts, and now he's trying to make it 3 in a row in the 2008 chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup.
Started racing basically with my dad. My dad's brothers always raced at some local tracks, and then we just go out and hang out and watch races when I was a kid. I always thought it was cool. It was something I was really interested in. When I started working on the cars, I loved it. I loved driving it too, but I love actually working on them as much as I like driving them. If I could figure out how to do it full time and not have to have a real job, that'd be great. And that's what I kind of always aimed for. But like I said, never dreamed it would get to this point.
Wisconsin native became a NASCAR champion in 2003, and now he continues to run well, second on the speed charts. Jamie.
I just talked to the team, and they said the longer the run, the tighter they get. So they came in and just made some shock adjustments. They're going to go back out and see if it got any better. But things are turning around maybe for this 17 team. They counted themselves out a couple weeks ago, but a second place finish last week, I think, put some new wind in the sails of this 17 team. Dave?
Kevin Harvick was having trouble with a car earlier that was looser sooner. They made a track bar adjustment. Interestingly, when we talk about track bar adjustments during pit stops, the guys are working right here in that hole, sticking a wrench down there. But they wanted a track bar adjustment on both sides. The left side, Tim Brewer in our ESPN Tech Center, you got to go under the car.
I think we can help you out just a little bit there, Dave. What we've got right here, folks, is a serrated deal. What we do, we go in here and actually mark it with Sharpie. And then what the guy's going to do, he's going to loosen this area up right here, and he's going to drop that thing down. When he gets it dropped down to where the crew chief wanted him to, it's 1/4-inch increments right here. He's going to tighten the thing back up, put the left rear tire on, then he's going to, have a pretty good evaluation of what it actually does on the racetrack as far as how much he moved it, as how much he's going to tighten the car up. Andy?
Hey, Tim, that rod right there is a rod that holds the rear end stable in the car, holds it right in the center. And then the way we adjust on pit stops, just like we saw Dave talking about, is with this rod through the car, down to the adjuster. You raise it up and down. You can do it quickly. You can do it right there on one of those 13-second pit stops. You can run it down, or like we see here, run it down and actually put some more weight on the left rear tire, take some off the right rear, and that'll tighten the car up. When the guy says his back end's sliding and he's no rear grip, put that track bar down and he'll be happy again.
Now, they changed that left side in practice mostly because that's not an adjustment that you'd normally make in the race. It takes a while to make that happen. You can do it on a pit stop, but they want to see what that feel gives Kevin with his race car, and it sounded like that it helped him.
If you see somebody doing it during a race, that means they're out to lunch because it takes a long time to do it on a pit stop. And they're just trying to do the things in this practice. That's what you do. You're changing things in practice that you can't change during the race. Springs, shocks, sway bars, putting that track bar up and down on the left. You can't really do that during the race. So they want to get this base package right that that's a package they can tune around. And that means they can play with air pressure, shocks, or not shocks, but track bar on the right side and wedge.
One of the drivers we thought might have a shot at the pole yesterday was this one here, Elliott Sadler. Got a local sponsorship and was very good in practice, and I almost had to separate my two colleagues here. They were discussing who was going to win the pole and who wasn't, and Elliott was one of those guys that you were thinking might have a shot.
Yeah, I told Elliott last night he cost me a small wager with my good buddy Andy up here yesterday. He said that his car just didn't. Everything was perfect till he got back to the throttle in turn 3, and he said the right front tire just never gripped, and he literally just gas had to come out of the throttle just a little bit. He thought that cost him. I said, well, it cost me too, just in case you're wondering. But that's all right. He's a lot happier. I was talking to him a little bit more too about some stuff. As you see, he's 20th fastest here right now in practice. His lap times look pretty good as he makes these longer runs, but he felt like that they found some things in Charlotte, and we heard him say yesterday that that test in Charlotte on Tuesday and Wednesday couldn't have come at a better time for this race team because they've been struggling in races.
I talked to some of the guys down there too. They said they found some things in the front geometry, spindles and A-frames, that kind of stuff. They found some things there that they thought were going to be better, so they did apply it here at this racetrack. And it was good. They were not as good in this practice as they were in the earlier practice, but looks like they've made a little headway.
Dodge really needs to have something good happen to them. They missed the chase, not a single Dodge in the chase, and here's a car for the 2-car for Kurt Busch has now moved up into the top 10 in terms of speed here in happy hour.
Yeah, and this is a team, I think, they've built some new race cars. We've heard Kurt talk about it over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and feeling like that they found a direction finally that they needed to move in, and they feel like their program is a lot better. They've been a lot more competitive, certainly. Last week, unfortunately, they got taken out kind of early in the race, and that hurt their chances. But they have moved into the top 10 here, and he just he seems to be moving steadily forward, and that's a good thing because Kurt's been pretty frustrated before that with their efforts.
They brought Tom German, the Team Penske engineer from the IRL, over to help them. Here are the manufacturers in terms of number of cars in the chase. 6 Chevys, 3 apiece for Toyota and Ford, and not. Final minutes of happy hour practice at Kansas Speedway. And folks, in the 4-year history of the chase, only once has a driver involved in the chase won the race here. Mark Martin did it in 2005. He did not win the championship that year. There are the 4 previous winners. Nemechek won it from the pole. Tony Stewart and Biffle, neither one were in the chase when they won in 2006 or 2007. The only 2-time winner at this racetrack was the 24 car of Jeff Gordon. He won it in 01 and 02, but that was before the chase began. Jamie.
And he sits 4th right now, put up that quick time earlier in the run. Now, they said that they're loose on throttle on exit, so they're trying to fix that without compromising the center of the corner, meaning they're trying to get it to sweep through the corner. Now, something to note on Jeff Gordon, not feeling well this weekend, very much under the weather. It's like chest and sinus issue. Yesterday didn't look too good, and today they said he just feels blah. So something to keep an eye on for Jeff Gordon, Dave.
Jamie, before Carl Edwards went back on the track, they made changes that had the driver reporting that the car was better in the center, just a little bit tied off. So crew chief Bob Osborne said, all right, let's come in, let's fill it up with fuel, put tires on, and this would be their final run. The car had better be good. He starts 34th tomorrow. Doc?
Long way to go, but he's got 400 miles to get there. 4 previous starts for Carl Edwards here. He has only 1 top 5, 3rd in the race in 2005, 2 years ago.
I've seen a lot of these guys put on tires now towards the end and pick up their times, trying to get in that last little bit of a run here as we get to the end of practice to see if all of those changes they've made, how it's going to affect them when they put those new tires on.
Yeah, what happens is you go make all these changes, you make an adjustment, come in, go back out, come back in, make another one. You do a series of those, and you've got turn around, you got 10 or 12 laps on your tires. You want to make sure that when you put new tires on, that those changes were all in the right direction.
David Reagan here is the 13th quickest in the charts right now, making his 2nd career start at Kansas Speedway.
Yeah, David was up in 5th in the first session, so he's having a pretty good practice here.
Marcus Ambrose in the 47 car, making the 2nd start in the JTG Daugherty Motorsports team. Tad and Jody Geschechter and Brad Daugherty own that car.
That thing's a little bit loose right there.
Oh.
And so is Jimmy. I was going to say, we might have to get Brad Daugherty to go down there and adjust on that 47 a little bit.
Maybe that's what happened.
Yeah, it could
like
be.
He's been working on it. That's right.
38 David Gilliland in front of this group. And right behind him is a 12 car of Ryan Newman.
Look at all the grooves already here in practice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so make sure you tune in tomorrow so you can watch all of that. It's going to be even more exciting.
Here comes a car. Looks like he may have tires on. His car's handling pretty good.
Yeah, Casey Kane's back in. He's 24th on the chart right now. He's ran a 33.41 on that lap, which is a very comparable lap to what a lot of our guys up the top of the chart are.
Scott Riggs in the 66 there. You see the 84 of A.J. Allmendinger, who will not be back in that car next year. May not be back next week. We're still unclear as to what's going to happen there. He's trying to drive and get himself a ride for 2009.
See Scott Riggs right behind him there, working kind of the middle to the top part of the racetrack. And then Joe Nemechek behind them.
7 car. Here's Robbie Gordon trying to hang on to that valuable 35th place in car owner points.
This car's been pretty squirrely out there, and he's only 40th in practice so far, so it's going to be tough for him to stay in there if he doesn't get that performance a little bit better.
Another driver looking for a ride in 2009, Patrick Carpentier, driving for Gillette Evernham Motorsports. Flags are out, and that will do it for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series happy hour. Next time they see a flag, it'll be the green flag coming their way at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Here's where the chase drivers will start, and you see only 2 of the 12 starting in the top 10. 7 of these drivers will start 24th or worst, and the worst a driver has ever started to win here at the bottom of your screen there, Tony Stewart started 21st back in 2006. So 7 of those drivers in the chase have got a lot of work to do.
Going to see a lot of passing.
Can they get there? Our coverage begins at 1 o'clock Eastern time, beginning with NASCAR Countdown on ABC tomorrow. Coming up next, SEC football, Mississippi State at LSU. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. So long, everybody, from Kansas City.